I guess it's good morning to everybody and welcome to the ILC home webinar. I think it's 15 or 16 number this time. So first of all, a big thanks to our partners and sponsors, to our corporate partners who are Carpenters, CoreLogic, the Innovation Group and ICAB, and our sponsor partners, Core Events and GeoBar. Thanks very, very much for your contributions. It really helps these things move smoothly. Mostly, though, it's thanks to all of you, the home claims world, for your support, your suggestions, coming along here every week and listening to us, all the recordings. We hope we've helped make a difference and in that we've kept the momentum going and the sort of change in communication and more open partnerships that seem to be existing as a result of the lockdown. We're going to be going through the summer and we're going to make some slight changes. In a couple of weeks, we'll move to a sort of alternative live webinar and then recorded podcast. Next week, we're going to look at actually the current business challenges of suppliers. And that's not so much, it's a bit of within the industry, but it's actually the straight business challenges of keeping going, finance, employment, etc., under what are extremely testing times. So we'll be looking at that next week. In 2 weeks will be the first of the podcast, and we're going to look at have a lighter look, but serious in some ways, at the plight of the specialist suppliers within the industry. So we're aiming to keep things going all the way through. So that first podcast will be, I think it's July the 23rd. So the momentum should keep going. Just a quick plug for our two conferences coming up. The Building Conference, which has been postponed, but it's now the 29th of September. And our home conference, which we're planning for the 11th of November. If you want to talk about that, either contact myself at alaniloveclaims.com. If you want to talk about sponsorship, etc., I'd come to me, but preferably go to Nick, our commercial director at nick@iloveclaims.com. So today, we're going to take a look at the disaster recovery market and how it's changing, if it's changing, how it's changing. It's a market with very, very unique demands, and we'll go on to discuss that. The difference, the suppliers always have a challenge in business as usual against any claims hike, but perhaps there are more relevant and unique challenges for this particular market. And of course, as everywhere else in claims, the dynamics are changing around it. So let's take a look at it. We'll take a look at the values to insurers, and we'll take a look at how we think the market's going to move forward. I use the market in quotation marks because markets don't move forward at the same pace. People make judgments, take guesses educated and move in a direction. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes people tail on and don't get so far so quickly. But we shall see. Delighted to have a panel with us today of people who are very expert in that market, starting with a great friend of ILC's, Jeremy Sykes, who's the MD at Polygon. He's the chap with the earphones, looking like a radio DJ today. Angela Royson, who's the support manager for suppliers in Crawford, and that takes up a very, very wide range of suppliers. Maureen Hughes, who's the MD of Rainbow up in my old hunting ground of Glasgow, East Lanarkshire and Falkirk. And I was born in Glasgow and lived in Lanarkshire, so I can go with that one. And also to Steve Hammond, who's late joiner from Chemdry. Steve, welcome to you. As always, the views expressed by the panel are totally their own, but they are interesting. We are here to hopefully to listen, to consider, to learn, and hopefully take ideas forward that help us all. At the bottom of the screen, as always, there's chats and questions. You can put them up. We may have time to answer some of them. Comments are always welcome. So enjoy it. I think I'll start with you, Jeremy. And I guess what are the current challenges? As MD of Polygon, what are the current challenges facing the disaster recovery market or industry? Can you hear me, Jeremy, or on your mute? Right. Okay. Can everybody else hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Jeremy, sorry, that question was to you. What are the current challenges facing the industry?
Yeah. Did anybody else here start on my answer or not?
No, we didn't. No. But we can hear you now.
You can hear me now. Okay, all right, fine. So I was just saying that the last 12 weeks have been a crazy journey for us all to try to understand and keep the whole thing rolling. I guess unlike some of the building contractors, pretty much all the restoration world has been operating all the way through this, and making sure that we are delivering both to the people who were in a flood situation at the beginning of this, and then the people who've had claims all the way through. So we haven't stopped. The big challenge we had to start with was having probably a 70% order drop overnight from some of the insurers, but they've done their best to try to look at the hot buttons, they and the adjusters, to try to look at the hot buttons for us, making sure we get paid better and things like that. We've still got quite a lot of claims that are sitting there in the background that we're unable to visit, not because of us, nor because actually many other contractors, but because the general public is nervous about having us in their homes, whatever we do, and whatever precautions we make, and whatever changes we've made to make it safe. But they're probably the big things. We're seeing getting back to BAU type levels right now.
And is it normal BAU levels for this time of year, or there's some tail coming through from earlier days?
With some insurers definitely getting back to BAU levels of orders, with other insurers less so.
What about you, Noreen? How are you finding the current challenges of sort of getting back to work?
Yeah. I think, as Jeremy has said there, it has been a really crazy 12, 14 weeks since lockdown. We've obviously had to adapt. We've still been working, carrying out fire, flood restoration, where it's been imperative to do so because of issues with policyholders not being able to move into alternative accommodation, or basically not wanting to. Again, like Jeremy says, we've got a lot of old wit that clients have been shielding, still just don't want any contractors in their house at all. So it's basically just been adapting to that as we've went along. Probably like my fellow colleagues here, we've been carrying out COVID-19 claims to keep key worker premises operational and such like. So we have been business as usual, obviously decreasing the insurance side, but an increase in the other side, to keep key workers, keep their premises clean and, moving forward. So yeah, it's very interesting times ahead, I think, in the next few months, but insurance work is definitely starting to pick up. And one thing I have to say, as Jeremy has also mentioned, is our insurance clients have really went out their way to settle existing invoices, etc., and keep our cash flow going, which is really key through these sort of surreal times.
Thanks, Noreen. Angela, you're in a bit of a different position because you, I guess, sit in the middle really. You
certainly do, Alan.
He's looking after suppliers for a large loss adjusting company. You've got to sit between the insurer and the supplier. And how are you finding that's making challenges in particular within the disaster recovery market?
I think within the disaster recovery market, the two challenges that I see above everything else in the last 12 weeks reiterates what Jeremy and Noreen have said about keeping going and responding to customers where we and they are able to do so. And we equally face the challenges of visiting customers and having claims on hold, as has been described by the other panellists. We've also seen a sharp increase in providers of the deep cleaning service, some somewhat left afield than others in the way in which they've approached this. We've seen it from traditional supplier routes of disaster management companies, but also a raft of companies who've come in from the side that either we've never had a relationship with, or our relationship is within a completely different sector of the market. For example, in glazing, we've seen that the suppliers in that area have now entered the deep clean environment, which is an interesting dynamic. So there's an awful lot of things to juggle across the traditional market, the customers who have ongoing flood claims. We, like both Jeremy and Noreen, have a number of claims that we just can't progress forward. A particular issue maybe is where customers are wanting to use their own contractor and that contractor is unwilling or unable to start work. So that puts a whole brake on the process for everybody. And on top of that is the dynamic of alternative accommodation, which has been touched on already. So it is quite a juggling act, and it's important that we all work together to get the end result for the customer.
It is true. And the dynamics of that, of course, aren't going to go away because there are delays in the system. There are delays with people's concerns rather than with anything particularly to do with the insurers or the suppliers. That's quite interesting. How are you finding all this stuff in the current environment, Steve? How are Chendri dealing with it?
Very much the same as what Jeremy, Noreen and Angela have said. There's been many challenges. First and foremost, health and safety challenges and being able to access those properties. But at the same time, it has created opportunities. I think we need to look at our businesses differently, which is what we've done. And I think the collaborative working has certainly helped. I think more people are now looking to work collaboratively, which has been really good. And I think there are some real positives across our market that we've all developed over the last few weeks.
So I think that's fair. Quite interesting within the dynamics of the market. I'm going to go back to Jeremy in a minute with this. We talked about deep cleaning being done by glaziers and everything. There's always change, so tradition never really stands still. But the biggest thing that I think hits this market from where I look at it is within the supply chain, we always have the issue of the huge variations in demand and how you're able to supply it. But that's never more true than it is in the disaster recovery market, because you guys have all this machinery ready for when a flood takes place in a major populated city, and it all sits there. But your use in business as usual has reduced quite significantly, it would seem to me, in peacetime. And that becomes a very difficult thing, because it's one, machinery, two, the breadth of expertise that you have compared to other people who might do it. So how do you keep all these people going and just ready to turn on when all of a sudden, Birmingham or Manchester or Glasgow get flooded out?
It's a challenge, and the overall market has changed over the last 10 years or so, as insurers have sought to push down, particularly on escape of water claims. They've increased excesses, they've increased cash settlement. I mean, that's something actually we've seen quite a lot in this current situation as well from some insurers. And if you take all of that volume out, then, I always think that we have to pay people from Monday to Friday, and we pay them on the BAU claims that come through the door. The flood events don't happen that often, but as you say, if you go to earlier this year, or if you go to a few years ago when we had the big events in Carlisle and Cumbria, and west of Aberdeen, you suddenly have places where you have no claims, and then suddenly you have shed loads of claims, 1,000, 2,000 claims in a week, and you've got to deal with them. And as you say, there's a lot of equipment. We spend over £1 million a year investing in new equipment to try to make claims faster. But you've got to make sure that you feed that resource in BAU times in order to be able to count on it when you really need it in times of sort of flood and surge. So yeah, it's a challenge, that. And I think some insurers understand that very well, and I think some insurers sort of count the capacity that everybody else is counting as the surge capacity, but don't want to really effectively pay for it in BAU times, and that's a struggle for all of us.
Yeah, and it is, and of course the challenge, as we always say with this, is for the insurers, they're in a cost-driven market, in a low-price war, and it becomes very hard for them to find ways they can save money. We can all argue about efficiencies in other areas, but in the short term, it's tough. Noreen, how do you deal with this then as a franchise in quite a big and wide populated area? You have the same issue as Jeremy was talking about, and you have to manage your business through low volumes and then phenomenally increased volumes for a period of time. How do you cope with this over the last 20 odd years that you've been running your franchise?
Almost 25.
Wow.
A long time. As Jeremy has said, we obviously have to carry quite a lot of equipment, various types of it. We're also constantly looking at new equipment to make the job easier, more streamlined, and it is a constant battle because personally we've probably got an excess of 500 pieces of drying equipment. However, you could find as business to usual we're maybe only using 50 to 60 per week. So you've got another 400 plus that are sitting in your warehouse. And again, it's not the best use of my technicians' time, but again, when they're not out on site, we've just got a constantly running maintenance program to ensure equipment's checked, maintained, pat tested, just to make sure there's no issues, and then it's basically, you know, stored again until times of need, because probably as Jeremy has found, and Steve will say the same, if you don't have that equipment, that when the occasional surge comes, so 2015 we had Carlisle, we had Aberdeen, we had Dumfries and Galloway, you need it then. And if you don't have it, you will not get it during a surge. So you need to maintain a large volume of equipment to deal with these occasions as and when they arise.
I mean, that is tough. How much business can you get from outside the industry when we have low volumes?
Well, probably, obviously having been in this game for almost 25 years, there has been a lot of changes. And when I first joined Rainbow, we didn't have any national account contracts. We didn't have any insurance contracts. So we basically had to do the old-fashioned way of go round, knock doors, introduce ourselves to insurance companies, brokers, loss adjusters, and basically say, you know, give us the opportunity, we'll go and do this, this and this. The way I sort of look at it is they obviously have an issue they need to resolve, and we resolve that issue and it makes their life easier. So we've almost went, you know, I think we're almost coming full circle again. I don't know if Jeremy and Steve can say the same, you know, that things are changing, the market's changing, and it's just really trying to keep on your toes, keep diversifying and moving forward. Obviously, Angela mentioned glaziers now doing deep cleans. That, I'll be honest, horrifies me a little, because like all my staff have had biohazard training. They have had the standard immunisations against the known diseases, and we're also insured to carry out this work, and it makes me worried when other people pop into the market and carry it out, because obviously, you know, are they doing as good a job? Are they qualified? And are they insured?
Well, I guess to some extent one of the difficulties there is establishing which ones do prepare and which ones don't, in the same way we spread out as well. Angela, from your angle, how do you help your suppliers cope with this huge economic challenge, which I think is typified most outside of the subsidence market, at least is typified most in the disaster recovery area?
Yes, it is. It certainly is the case. And there's a lot of work happening around data analytics and trying to look at predictive avenues. I appreciate none of us have got a magic wand and can work out where the next flood is going to happen. But what we've seen over the last 20 years is an increasing amount of flooding. There are a lot of areas that reflood, particularly, say, the River Severn, Cumbria, and the areas up in Scotland that Noreen has mentioned. So there is an element of looking at predictive and data analytics. It doesn't give you the answer to everything, but it is an additional tool which we need to use. And also looking at the resilience and diversification within the suppliers. It's interesting that Noreen mentioned about new equipment as well, because that has made a step change from where we were, say, 10 years ago, of having more efficient equipment and having that also on a sort of flexible and versatile deployment. Because this was certainly something we saw in Cumbria, for example, of a lot of equipment being able to be brought in quickly.
Okay. And of course, investment in new equipment is something that's expected, because
yes,
if I guess for you, Steve, if somebody else comes out with new equipment, the first question is, where's yours? So
exactly, and very much like everyone else has said, you know, we invest in equipment on an annual basis. And we maintain that equipment as well. You know, there are new products out, there are smarter ways to do things, but also with equipment, the other concern will be if business as BAU volumes decrease, it's also about having the expertise and the labour resources available within our marketplace, because we need to bring those new people in, we need to invest heavily in those people and train those people. And if the business as usual volumes don't allow that to bring fresh people in, then you know, the outcome is slightly different in 4 or 5 years' time. So it's not just equipment; it is skills that I would say that probably everyone here, we would say that we are specialist drying companies and restoration companies. You know, we don't hire a piece of equipment to then go and install it into a property. That's not what we're about. We're all specialists in what we do. So I think it's also personnel, Alan, as well.
Okay, right. I get that to some extent, but of course I can hear, and I've sat in meetings with the entrepreneurs in the world saying, well, do you know what, guys, you want to be in this market. That's a feature of this market. It's a price-driven purchase of insurance, so therefore the pressure and cost obviously comes down the line to you. So what kind of innovation, I don't know if it's there, what kind of innovation do you think, Jeremy, can help get disaster recovery companies through this? Or do they need to start diversifying? I mean, Noreen said, with quite rightly, okay, so if somebody else is coming in to do these things, I'm trained to do it, I'm worried about it. But then again, to be fair, you guys sometimes go into other select markets, contractor markets, I'm sure as well. So it is open for new entrants, as long as they, taking what Noreen says, as long as they do the right qualifications, etc. So in the challenges of future, does the disaster recovery market have to get out and say, look, we either need to partner with different people or move in a direction that will help us deal with this, because nobody's going to keep paying for it in business as usual.
Yeah, nobody owes us a living. I totally support what Steve and Noreen both said, actually, in that just having a box is not anything. The people are it, and the people have got to make a judgment on site, which is about the damage that they see, but the individual that has the damage, because that sort of two things together decides what direction you do something and take something. In terms of where does the industry go, I think that, there's some short-term challenges. I mean, our mate down in 10 Downing Street with the blonde hair, he's going on about build, and build is going to, if it really does happen, drag a lot of people into building new houses or whatever they decide to put our tax money into. And that might support jobs, but it might actually pull people from all sorts of other industries, whether they be contractors who are supporting insurance. In building markets, it could be people who are on the edges of our world who have got building skills, and they might be attracted by higher wages if there's an awful lot of money going at them. So we've got some short-term challenges there, but I guess the structural thing is one of the things that I see is very different, in that we're part of an international group. I see what happens outside the UK, and the UK has got a history of having a very procurement-led approach to this sector, and it's kind of salami sliced commodities, and it tries to commoditize everything it buys, and so it focuses on a price rather than necessarily focusing on a full claim cost, and we build cost into processes which just beating people up on price doesn't actually fix. And one day we have to actually look at where that real cost is, and if we build it into the way that we buy things, we need to actually consider if that's what we're currently doing is the best way of doing it.
No, I think that's a fair point. The challenge is there. Noreen, from your angle though, one of the things I would always worry about when I used to run a supplier is where's the business coming from and who's making the decisions. So if I give you an example, whatever part of the market I'm in, I could be doing an absolutely first-class job. I could be technically very, very proficient. My client base could be delighted with my business and what it does. Somebody comes along and says, do you know what, we can do this, perhaps a larger slice of it, including the part that you're in, and we do it far more economically, and do you know what, we think we've found a way around the challenges of demand fluctuation. Is that not the biggest danger you have in the disaster recovery market, that it hasn't actually been inventive enough over the last few years?
I would say you're correct. We obviously, if you look at our competitors, look at Jeremy, Steve and others as being competitors, because we are in the disaster restoration market specifically. However, there are others now that have come in, more so building networks, that basically have like a one-stop shop, and they obviously go down the route of not only drying but doing all the reinstatement works. Jeremy has also said, price basically rules what insurance companies do, and in one aspect, Steve mentioned our staff. Our staff have so much expertise because they're not just technically aware of what's going out, depending what the job is. They've got to have lots of soft skills because they're dealing with clients, obviously the last 12, 14 weeks, who are, vulnerable, lots of issues. You've got to have so many skills. Not only that, I actually joke sometimes they've got to be good photographers and videographers so that they can actually, record what's happening on site to let an adjuster or a broker see what's going on and authorise work. So, it's going to change. But again, the question could be, Alan, what can we actually do? Do we then now go into the building market as well and compete against the one-stop shops? It's a big question.
Yeah, well, that's one option. Of course, we'll move on to Angela here. The other option is to look at how suppliers in different areas can work with greater trust. So if we go over something we've discussed quite a lot recently, we said at the outset of this, one of the things we hope to break is that do insurers trust suppliers? And then, of course, we said, well, actually, suppliers have to trust insurers. And over the years, that's been a bit of an issue. But part of the outcome of that history is often that suppliers don't trust one another. And relating back to something Jeremy said about the way that procurement has often taken place in a salami style, it hasn't always encouraged the breadth of the claim to be worked on in a very hand-in-hand way between suppliers. So is one of the answers, Angela, if you can expand on this, it would be great, to get suppliers working better together so that when there's a handoff from Noreen to a contractor, it's smooth, it's easy, and rather than working against each other, which, people might...
It is. It's almost like passing the baton in a relay race,
yeah,
and making sure that all goes intact. And one of the areas that I think we can do more from is the use of media. We're all taking media through different means whilst we're on site, whether it be loss adjusters, damage management companies, and so on. And I think we can make better use of that through sharing portals and to make it a smoother journey for the customer, that the customer doesn't have to tell each person their story from the beginning all over again. So it's being able to work, as has been said, collaboratively, but also to share the tools that are at our disposal now, which are quite wide and varied. I think we also have to respect, as Steve has said, the growth in skills of the damage management staff that are on the ground. They, at the end of the day, are the eyes and ears for both insurers and loss adjusters, and we need to square that circle very effectively between all organisations. I think that's a key part.
Yeah, I agree. That's very important. Let me move on to Steve with that. This comment I can still hear coming back in that one. You were absolutely right about the skills. They're there, but you know what? That's not my problem. That's, if I'm an insurer, that's your problem. I hire you in a disaster recovery because you got that. I take it as read that you will be qualified. You'll have the latest qualification. You'll be up to date with the relevant machinery that you need. All you've got to do is stay cost competitive and provide that. So that's the real challenge, isn't it?
The challenge for that, for me, Alan, is that's okay if it's an even playing field. So everyone in the DR&R sector, as long as everyone has those skills, then that's totally agreeable. I think Noreen raised it where she said that, really concerned about glazers coming in to do deep cleanses. Are they qualified? Do they have the insurances, etc., etc.? Because, potentially people can come in and undercut, but not have the skills and qualifications. So as long as it's an even playing field, I think everyone here today would say that that's fair. And that is what market forces will drive. And therefore, it is for us to then deal with that challenge.
Couldn't equally, Steve, the same question coming back at you in your industry and saying, well, you dip it into renovation after you've done the drying. You're not really expertise or qualified to...
Absolutely.
The subcontractors that you use there have all the necessary health and safety requirements, etc.
So we partner as a business with lots of other businesses that do specialists, which we're not qualified to do and we wouldn't do. And I think Noreen would be the same, and so would Jeremy. So we look at those specialist organisations and we will partner with those. And I think Angela touched on it. It's about how you share and work collaboratively on an open book policy. And I think if you do that, then I think it's really important to make sure that every single visit made to a property is a worthwhile visit that adds value to the claim. And I think for me, that's really important, because that's what will drive the efficiencies in our business and in our sector.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Jeremy, you've been, within the market, I think, a bit ahead sometimes in your thinking, if you don't mind me making a compliment. And you've
that's a first, Alan.
And see what it was like in different areas. The bit that confuses me, where I think disaster recovery's business is concentrated technically, which is right, but not in the breadth where you guys, where you've at least started to go, is you first in. Why are you not taking control of the claim and making sure it can be managed? So while the investment in technical stuff has been very good, the investment within the industry hasn't been to broaden the opportunity that first in the doorstep gives you.
Yeah, but I think insurers in the UK are very, very procurement driven, and I do think there is a lot of focus on buying everything at the lowest possible price. We've seen lots of e-auctions on our commodity ever since I've been in the business. I haven't been in it as long as Noreen. I've only been in it for 11 years, but it's so, sorry, that wasn't meant to be a dig with Noreen, sorry. That was me, that was humility. Even in that time, there's lots and lots of e-auctions and beating down on price. The prices have dropped by 30-40% over the past 10 or 11 years. How do you do that when actually everything else is going in the other direction? It's pretty difficult. But in terms of really impacting claim cost, I think there's a different philosophy required as to how you do it. You have to actually join up some of these services, and whether one company seeks to try to be an expert in everything, I totally take the point. We're not. Not everybody is. Neither is a contractor that says, oh, by the way, I'm suddenly a restoration expert. Actually, I've probably poached one person from Polygon or Rainbow or ChemDry or somebody who knows something, and I've got 30 bits of kit. Obviously, that's not true for all of them. Some people are very capable, but in the longer term, in the long term, in 10 years' time, are we still going to be doing exactly this? Are we going to be using the Internet of Things? Are we going to be trying to prevent claim damage or reduce the severity of claim damage rather than actually just doing the same old? And that's the concern. We do have to lift our heads up a bit and look forward at all the things that are possible. Angela rightly said, there's a lot of technology out there. We're not making best use of all of it.
There is a lot of technology. Noreen, have you been using that technology? I know you have, because we had a discussion yesterday. How have you been using that technology to help the service and make it more efficient?
Yeah, obviously the area geographically I cover is quite large, and obviously some of the areas are remote in Scotland, and we have been using remote monitoring systems so that we're not having to make regular visits before the areas are dry. We can monitor them from the office, and then when it's dry, go back and uplift the kit. So it saves down on the travel to and fro the job and staff time as well. So the technician can be off doing something else. But again, obviously, sort of touching, you said, we're first on site, so why are we not managing more of the claim? I think we probably all have seen changes over the last 10 years, and that I actually now employ a joiner, but it's not to do building reinstatement works. It's purely because our clients have asked us to carry out more works, that when we are on site, and if there is a requirement to do strip outs to aid the drying regime, that we have the skills to do it. So we have obviously done that. We now also undertake asbestos removal. Again, it means that we're keeping the claims process moving quickly, because I think probably Angela will agree that's one of the key things with insurers. How long is a claim open? Because each day it's open, it costs them money. So we have to try and keep that claim time as short as possible.
Okay, I mean, and yeah, the innovation is taking place, albeit at different paces.
Different paces, yes.
Back to you then. Let me come back to you, Angela. Has the way that we have all witnessed the procurement in recent years, has that got a lot to answer for in terms of the efficiency of the claims process?
I think it's a loaded question, Alan, but yes, I mean, I've worked for both insurer and loss adjuster in the procurement piece, and it has become a much more commoditised activity. But I think certainly from a loss adjuster perspective, we do have to look far more in the round than potentially from an insurer's position, because clearly we're looking at a particular part of the market. I think another thing certainly that I'm seeing more and more from the procurement side of it is looking at a bigger swathe of things and bringing in more around sustainability as very much a new kid on the block in terms of affecting how the procurement happens, and that definitely will have an impact on pricing. And I think also the points that Jeremy and Noreen have made around the extended skill sets and looking to the future are eminently valid, and we would be very wrong if we don't take those on board looking at future procurement.
Okay. Steve, from some of the stuff you've said and how you have to broaden the product offer, I mean, there's some pretty advanced claims handling companies out there investing digitally pretty heavily to give themselves a chance of partnering well with people. Do you think the future is going to come with somebody that can capture the claim early and can get the procurement and technical side balanced in a better way?
Absolutely, and I think technology has a lot to play, and I think one of the things that for sure has happened in the last 12, 14 weeks is that the adoption of technology has happened really quickly in our sector. Some of us already had it. Most businesses would be able to video everything and actually provide that. We can provide self-service apps, etc. They're available now for customers to self-serve, etc., to speed the claims process up. I think using technology to get people out, the right people out on site on the first visit is really, really key and really important. And I think that's probably one of the things that I've seen in the last 12 weeks or so that has really moved forward at a real pace from all operating businesses.
Jeremy, back to you. I think you work for an organisation which works all over Europe, probably wider, you'll tell me. From meeting with your colleagues who operate in Europe, is there anything that we can learn from the models they're using to service policyholders that you think we could really do with here?
Yeah, I won't do the 10-minute pitch about Polygon, but yeah, it is beyond Europe. Yeah, you're right. They do things quite differently in quite a few places, but you have to look at the whole market, because I think as you started off saying about pricing, we're all guilty of buying our insurance as cheaply as we possibly can, as long as we get a free cuddly meerkat. So we drive some of this stuff, don't we? And it's 315 quid is the average price of a buildings and contents policy according to the ABI. If I went to Germany, it would probably be about 1,000 euros. Scandinavia about 1,200 euros. So it's very different, and all that rolls downhill from insurers. But the structure is different, and they do tend to have fewer people involved in a claim. So our businesses in, say, Germany or Finland or somewhere, they would take responsibility if they didn't do it all, but they'd take responsibility for much more of the claim, the restoration as well as the reconstruction, and ultimately that ends up making a shorter claim, which, as somebody already said, is a key element to being successful, both from the customer's perspective and the cost. So I think we can learn something from that, and I do think some of the technology we put in the UK, some of these sort of systems, and I guess one of my little bugbears is that we have so many systems that we have to deal with from all of the customers we deal with, because there is no cooperation. Everybody's got their own system. It's not always possible to integrate with an API or an integration IT system with all of those. So you just push failure demand actually into all the suppliers who've got to actually do and deal with all these systems. They're a bit of a patch for covering up the fact that if you put more stuff to fewer suppliers, then you wouldn't have to do all the integration, because you wouldn't have all these people to talk to in the first place.
Yes, thanks, Jeremy. I think that's very relevant, and the financial difference between purchase insurance in Germany, Scandinavia, and the UK is absolutely vital in what we try and do. Noreen, we're just about finished, so I'm going to give you the last question. Do you think that running something as locally as you do, I know it's a big locale, but locally, has that made you focus more on customer service and technology than perhaps having to, I don't know how much you have to follow in the steps of a national company. It depends what the arrangements are. But being that close, it's difficult in some ways, but does it make customer service a tad easier for you?
I would actually say it is easier, obviously, because I'm a local business. I've obviously got local staff, both my technicians, claims handlers. Just to sort of give you a scenario, we get an instruction through, the claims handler will phone Mrs. Smith, and the claims handler will be responsible for that claim, dealing with the admin from start to finish, including we do cuddle calls at the end of each job just to make sure Mrs. Smith's okay, everything's went correctly, that we've passed the job on to X and take it from there. The same technician will also continue to deal with that job. So we are lucky being local. It gives a lot of customer continuity. I think our net promoter score for client expectation is 82%, which is a world class. So yeah, I'm happy with that.
And so you should be. I guess the challenge model, I'll go to Angela for one. The challenge in that model is how do you make all the franchises as good as Noreen's, whereas probably in Jeremy's case, he's got a handle on consistency across the country.
It is a very big challenge, Alan, and we do see this vis-a-vis the franchise and the employed models. I think it's fair to say there are pockets within both models that are excellent and those that are not, but it's also how they replicate. For example, when, say, Noreen's team deployed to Carlisle, it is a different market, it's a different locality, and it's being able to transfer that skill and knowledge into a different market and a different location, and it's very interesting to see how that happens. But to me, having those local relationships and knowledge is a very, very important factor, but it has to be overlaid into the bigger picture, obviously, because we're looking on a national basis.
So there's never a right or a wrong answer.
It's absolutely not.
Where it is run. Thank you, panellists, to Steve, Angela, Jeremy, and Noreen. That was very good. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed finding that. But I think there's more to be said in this. It's a subject I'm sure we will return to over the coming weeks. Thank you also to everybody who's tuned in, well into three figures again, for your support. We hope we're maintaining the momentum that we've built up, and we'll continue to do that. As I've said, we'll look at how we run businesses as suppliers next week, specific to the market, but actually specifically the business challenge, never mind anything else that we all face just now. I think that'll be helpful. We'll then move on to the following week to our first of our podcasts. Another plug again, Building Conference, 29th of September, Home Conference, 11th of November. Contact either Nick at Isle of Claims or Alan at Isle of Claims. Thanks again for tuning in. We hope you enjoy these every week. We will continue. Again, I'm going to repeat what I say every week because I just always feel the need that it helps. COVID-19 is still out there, very much alive. So please look after yourselves, look after your businesses, look after your families. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks to the panellists yet again. Have a nice day.